Hi, welcome to part 2 of biodiversity. So we're going to start here with threats to biodiversity. So by the end of this section, you will be able to identify significant threats to biodiversity, explain the effects of habitat loss, exotic species, and hunting on biodiversity, identify and the early predicted effects of climate change on biodiversity. Okay, so and there's some videos there. You can watch those if you want to. All right, so basically, everybody thinks we're in the sixth biggest extinction rate. So the background extinction should be one mammal every 700 years. The current rate is 1,000 times faster, and this is mainly because we're destroying our rainforest by beef and palm oil plantations. The background should be one amphibian every 1,000. The current rate is about 45,000 times faster. So animals are going extinct pretty fast, particularly in the rainforests. All right. So the decline of Earth's biodiversity is an unintended consequence of multiple factors that have been enhanced by human activity. They can be summarized by the acronym HIPPO. So H is for habitat loss. I is for invasive species, P is for pollution, P is for population, and O is for overharvesting and overuse. So I would know what that HIPPO means. So the first one is habitat loss, and the David Attenborough talks a good bit about this, right? So this is a palm oil plantation where there used to be tropical rainforest, so we're always clearing forests. So we generally, and the way the cities are set up, sort of, is you want to settle on land that where you can grow food, but eventually that gets changed into a city, and then it sort of expands out there. So really the best agricultural land now is actually cities. And so anyways, but so this is conversion of natural areas to farms, houses, roads, etc. And we also talk about fragmentation, and I'm going to give you an HHMI video on that. It talks about habitat fragmentation. And so, there's very little natural area left here. There's very little natural area left here. No natural area left here. So all of this, so when in that movie, the Leonardo DiCaprio movie, he talks when they're doing the tar sands, they're basically removing vast swaths of the boreal forest for fossil fuels. It's very environmentally degrading. So anyways, and this is talking about fragmentation. And so, right, so you end up with the original, and now you're just fragmented. And there's a lot less animals can live in these fragments than can live up there. That's the idea. So there's a lot less biodiversity here than there is up here. And here's some, this actually shows this here where they actually build ways that the animals can cross the road, but roads are a major threat to animals. This is also habitat loss. This is also palm oil plantation. This is agriculture that used to be grasslands, and it is no longer grasslands. But again, this is all being this is possible because of the Ogallala Aquifer. But they are doing strip farming here and stuff like that. They do have best agricultural practices, but this is a rubber tree plantation. So at one point, China basically cut down all its forest and planted these rubber tree plantations, but now rubber is synthetic. And so they don't need them anymore. And they're actually trying to reforest their land now. So they understood that was a big mistake. So this is global climate change. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that, but but this is climate change is also affecting biodiversity. This is also climate change. This was actually fossil fuels, I think. So this is talking about fossil fuels and how that has affected biodiversity. So really the polar bears really don't have anywhere else to go. So they live most of their life cycle actually on the ice. And if there's no more ice, they're either going to have to adapt or they're going to go extinct. This is coral bleaching because the oceans are getting warmer and it's also acidifying. We're losing our sea level. So the sea level, so half of Florida is basically going to go underwater. But this is the storm surge, right, in 2010, and here it is in 2100. So you can see the storm surge has moved way back here. And this is high tides, right? So this is high tide here, and this is high tide down here. So as the ice melts, the sea levels are going to rise, and that's going to flood. So what we do now is we replenish our beaches. So our beaches are eroding away. So we're constantly putting sand on our beaches to maintain them because of tourism and stuff like that. So what should really happen is this city should move back, right? This city is eventually going to have to move back, but that's not going to happen. So we're fighting nature. So this is ocean acidification. So as the temperature rises and CO levels rises, the ocean actually becomes more acidic. And I'm not going to go into all the chemistry there, but this is a video. So basically, as the ocean becomes more acid, it ties up the carbonate, and like seashells and shrimp and lobster and crabs and coral, they all need that calcium bicarbonate to actually make their shells. So if there's no more calcium bicarbonate, they can't make their shells, and that's the idea. But anyways, and the ice caps are melting, so this is showing you that. So this is invasive species, and this is a real problem. So the emerald ash borer. So I take my dogs out to Hayes Kennedy Park, and they had about 10 ash trees, and they were all dying. So they actually just cut them down, and they were dying because of this emerald ash borer. So all the ash trees in town are actually dying. So they used to make baseball bats. I think Louisville Slugger used to make baseball bats out of ash wood. So this is a tree snake, brown tree snake in Guam. So Guam is an island. It doesn't have any native mammals or reptiles. And so when the snake got there, it had no predators, and it just really decimated the bird population. This is kudzu. This is invasive. And actually, they planted this on purpose. And if you go, if you get out of Louisville, you can start seeing this along the roads, and it just grows up, and it basically is going to kill this whole forest. It'll tear down electric lines and things like that. So here's the cane toad. This is an invasive species in Australia. And they also have this in Florida. So these are toxic, and if something eats them, they'll basically die. So they don't have any natural predators. A big one is the python in the Everglades. And so they feel like some people let their pets go, and now they have actually become an important part of the ecosystem. I think they can get big enough to actually eat small alligators and mammals and fish, but pythons in the Everglades is an issue. So they're trying to get rid of them, but it's really hard to, it's hard to get rid of them. This is the lionfish in the Caribbean. So this is native to Mediterranean, but now it's gotten to the Caribbean and it has no natural predators. This is the emerald ash borer. I just told you that. So this got here from China, and it's killing all the ash trees. So actually starlings, those are the ones that do those murmurations. Those are invasive. Africanized honeybees. So there's actually a new, and here's actually some good invasive species here. This is one in pythons in Florida. So basically invasive species, when they come here, they have no natural predators. They colonize habitats quickly. They usually have a high biotic potential. They're usually R species. They're usually generalists. And we spend a lot of money a year trying to control these. So there's a new wasp that just came in, and it was on the news the other night that they found the first nest. It was in Washington State, but I think it can kill you if it stings you. But Africanized honeybees is another example. So what they did is, actually the honeybee here is not native either. It's native actually to Africa. But the honeybee we have here is pretty docile and it makes honey. But the African honeybee is more aggressive, but it makes more honey. So what they were hoping is they would cross our honeybee with the African honeybee and they would get a mild bee that produces a lot of honey. But actually what they got was a bee that actually is pretty aggressive. So they're moving up from the equator too, and I think they're in southern United States, but these are not good. But this is the giant land snail. There's lots and lots of invasive species. Zebra mussels, these are important in the Great Lakes. They're trying to get rid of them. They clog pipes and things like that. So this is an example of the mongoose. So basically Hawaii also, since it's an island and it's a volcanic island, it doesn't have any native reptiles or mammals. So the rats were on the ships, right? And they were imported to Hawaii and they ate the sugarcane crop. So they wanted to, preserve their crops. So they imported mongooses to kill the rats. But the mongooses are actually active during the day and the rats were active during the night. So the mongooses actually found an easier target and they ate the birds and the bird eggs. And these birds have no natural predators. So basically it made the problem worse. So anyway, so now they have trying to get rid of the mongoose. But they have goats in Hawaii they're trying to get rid of. They have wild goats and wild pigs in Hawaii they're trying to get rid of. So anyways. So another threat to pollution is pollution. So you have pesticides, oil spills. This is a dead zone where nothing lives here. A lot of this came from the agriculture up here in the Midwest that goes down to the Mississippi River. You have air pollution, smog, water pollution, all kinds of ways that actually decrease biodiversity. And humans are the biggest threat. So there's over 8 billion people in this planet right now. They think it's going to actually top out at about 11 billion. So, but we have way too many people that want way too many things. So everybody wants to live like us, which is not sustainable. And so it's a problem. All right. So this is a pretty good movie. I think it's a long movie. But anyways, so what they really think, though, is the human population is going to level out. But are we going to be able to carry enough biodiversity with us? That's the question. The last one is overharvesting, overfishing, and overexploitation. Right. So, we're in capitalism. So if you're in capitalism, sustainability isn't really factored in. It's just make as much profit as you can today and, don't worry about it. So we have way over harvested our oceans. We're cutting down our forests. We cut off the top of mountains to get coal out, and then don't put it back the way it was. And there's all kinds of issues with over harvesting, mainly because there's too many people. So here's the pet industry. So, they're basically taking, these are all snakes. So they have snakes in these little bottles that they're trying to sell. But this is pet industry, which mainly comes from the equator, like these parrots and stuff. These are all basically animals more closer to the equator. And then there's hunting and poaching. So they poach elephants for their tusks. They poach rhinos for their horn. There's very few white rhinos left in the wild. They hunt lions for their coat. They're not that long ago, they had that dentist that killed that lion, and they lured him off of the sanctuary, and then when he got off the sanctuary, they killed him. What was the name of that lion? I can't remember. So, and anyways, so they poach giraffes for their meat. They eat gorillas for their meat. This is shark fin soup, and this is mainly a China or Asian thing, where they'll catch the shark and then they'll just eat the fins. So these are all fins, and this is shark fin soup. So it's considered a delicacy. It's very expensive. So it symbolizes wealth, power, prestige, and honor. So, like, if you could serve this at a wedding, this would be prestigious. So tigers. So there used to be different tigers. You had Siberian tiger, South China tiger, Indo-Chinese tiger, the Bengal tiger, right? So you had all these different tigers. This one's actually extinct. And this is their where they used to be their habitat use, and now the red is where it is now. So there's only 7% of the habitat left, and this is what that what was that Tiger King was about, right? So there's lots and lots of tigers in captivity. I think there's more in captivity than there actually is in the wild. But these get eaten for all kinds of different, traditional Chinese medicine, right? So the eyes are for epilepsy, the nose is for snake bite, the whiskers are for toothache, so they have all these remedies of the, if you eat the claws, it's for insomnia, skin is for mental illness. Anyways. And then these are all kinds of tiger products that you can buy on the Chinese market. I'm going to skip over that. But that's, yeah. So here's a bowl of tiger penis soup. So if you want to eat a tiger penis, it's $320 a bowl. So it's supposed to boost virility. This is rhinoceros horns. So basically, these are all the products that can be made of rhinoceros horns. The main market here is in Vietnam. So this is the passenger pigeon, which went extinct. So it was one of the most gregarious birds there was. So when they flew over, the whole sky would go dark. And Martha was thought to be the world's last passenger pigeon. She died in 1914 at the Cincinnati Zoo. This is a picture of her here. But they actually think that they were highly dependent on these cane brakes, which were very common before the white man came. And I actually have some cane growing in the pollinator garden. It is native. It's a native bamboo, but they call it cane. So like you have Cane Run Road or Cane Branch or cane something. That's actually, when they talking cane, they're actually talking this plant right here. It is a native bamboo. It's a bamboo that's native to this area. So this one extinct mainly because of humans. Whales almost went extinct because of humans. So basically and the thing that really saved the whales was electricity, because actually we used the oil to light lamps at night, like the street lights at night, like Mary Poppins, right? So he went around and lit the lamps at night, and electricity really saved the whales. But it's also used for body oil and soap, and it's also used for, like, they make the corsets. So this is baleen, and this is the baleen. So you have baleen whales that actually eat like that, and then you have the dolphins, which actually have teeth. So the orca is actually a dolphin and not a whale because it has teeth. But anyway, so this baleen, but they used all kinds of different parts of the whale, and whales are coming back. And then this is overharvesting. So it used to say you could walk across the Atlantic Ocean on the back of a cod, and that's how plentiful they were, but they have been vastly overharvested, and the cod population is actually in trouble. All right, so the last one will be preserving biodiversity. And by the end of this section, you will be able to describe biodiversity as the equilibrium of natural fluctuating rates of extinction and speciation, explain the legislative framework for conservation, identifying the factors important in conservation preserve design, identify examples of the effects of habitat restoration, and identify the roles of zoos in biodiversity conservation. So basically, how can we protect biodiversity? So we can stop overharvesting. And if you have areas of the ocean where you cannot harvest, then the fish go there and they reproduce. And then when they go out of those areas, you can actually harvest those. And that is a more sustainable way to do it. But all the nations have to follow the rules. And if they don't, then it's a bust, right? So So you should have hunting and fishing laws, and every state really has hunting laws, and they actually monitor. That's a population study. So if there's too many white-tailed deer, you can kill maybe one buck and two females or two does, and that changes according to the population and how much habitat there is. There's also poaching laws. So poaching isn't a big issue in the United States, but it is in developing nations. So if you can kill a tiger and make $12,000, or starve to death, that's an issue. So and you can protect habitat by parks and nature preserves, wilderness areas, wildlife refuges, and zoos. And the last thing I'm going to talk about is the Endangered Species Act. So I think I already had that one. Oh, this is talking sustainable yield. I already talked about that. And you can also have hunting and fishing laws. And so you should assure availability of resources for the future. So you can maintain maximum sustainable yield, right? So you should only take as much fish and then leave the fish so you have some for next year. Tragedy of the commons is the idea that no one owns the oceans. And so who is looking out for the fish in the ocean? Really nobody. So tragedy of the commons is when when one or two people overuse the resource, and then it ruins it for everybody. So if there's no fish left in the oceans, it's basically a tragedy for everybody, which is the commons. You can have ecosystem-based management, where you actually manage ecosystems, and that's really done through computer modeling and things like that. And then you can have adaptive management, which you're really, I would think, when I think of adaptive management, I really think of Africa, where you have to really get the locals involved in seeing that the wildlife is worth more alive than it is dead. And so you have to sort of incorporate the local natives to let them have a sustainable life without killing the animals. And that's like tourism and things like that. So there's all kinds of things can go with adaptive management. But these are parks, so you can protect it with parks. So this is Yellowstone National Park, which is the first park. And this is where the wolves are. They put the wolves. And this is almost connected to the Grand Teton Park, but not quite. So the biggest park in Louisville is actually Iroquois Park. We just hiked there the other day. So they have a grassland at the top of that. But Louisville actually has a pretty good park system. This is sort of parks in Africa. So this is Serengeti National Park. Here's Mount Kilimanjaro. Here's different national parks they have here. But again, these parks are not connected. So these parks should be connected. I don't know what's in between here, but anyways. So parks are important to protect biodiversity. And wolves are actually protected here, but if they go off the park, then they can be shot. So as long as you stay on the park, they're protected. But if they go off the park, they can be shot. All right. So basically, this can help conserve biodiversity. So this is the Nature Preserves Commission in Kentucky, and these are basically there to save biodiversity, and these are all the different ones here. So these are, and the only one in Kentucky is Barrett Creek State Park. This is the one by the zoo. It's not very big, actually. But this is Kentucky distribution of the Indiana bat, which is an endangered species. And this is maternity records. This is where they are actually breeding. Other records. This is where they hibernate in caves. So they actually go in caves, things like that. So they keep track of things like that. They keep track of endangered species. They preserve natural habitat, things like that. So these are wilderness areas. And the Wilderness Area Act of 1964 actually protected wilderness areas. So basically, In USA, federal land is set aside by an act of Congress, and human activity in wilderness areas are restricted to scientific study, no mechanized recreation, horses are permitted, and no motorized vehicles equipment. You cannot hunt in wilderness, you cannot drill for oil in wilderness areas, so it's pretty restricted. So the wilderness areas is pretty restricted, and you can see a lot of them are actually out west and a little bit in the Smoky Mountains right here. But a lot of them are out west. This is wildlife refuges, and wildlife refuges, this is actually run by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And human activities, you can hunt here, you can fish here. You can do wildlife, you can do photography, and again, you cannot drill for oil here. So you can't really develop this. And these are all the National Wildlife Refuge systems in Kentucky. There's only one in Kentucky, and this is out west. So this is Land Between the Lakes. This is out west. So this is bottomland hardwood forest. So this is where this one is. If you've ever been to Land Between the Lakes, you could go to that. So this is the issue with the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. So it is a wildlife refuge, which means you should not be able to drill for oil. So what they have done is they've drilled for oil all the way. So here's an oil field, here's an oil field. And so what they wanted to do is they wanted to drill in this Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. And there was a big uprising against it, why they didn't want to do it. There's all these videos here. I'm not going to show it. But so Obama said, no, you can't. But I think Trump now said, okay, yeah, you can drill here. So they're trying to drill for oil along this wildlife refuge, which technically they should not be able to do that. So they changed the law so they can drill for oil. But again, this is this huge pipeline, right? That has to take it, it's all the way here at the top. This is Anwar, all the way at the top of Alaska. And then you have to build this pipeline and anyways. All right, so another one is wildlife refuges in Kentucky. So this is run by Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife. There's 83 of them. And this is where I actually did my master's thesis. It wasn't a wildlife management area then. Actually, the Nature Conservancy bought it, and it actually ended up as a wildlife management area. And you can hunt and fish there now. And so the last one is zoos. And zoos used to be purely for entertainment, and you were probably used to seeing cages like this, where the animals were just put in cages, and then they were, it was mainly for entertainment. But now zoos have really, progressed. So it's an important thing for holding endangered species. They keep track of genetic diversity between zoos. So that they trade animals and or semen, and they breed animals and try to preserve genetic diversity. They generally have moved away from these, sterile cages to these more natural enclosures here where they have more than one species. So here they have zebras and some kind of gazelle and a giraffe. And zoos are also important for education and outreach. So this is the Louisville Zoo, and they have an award-winning 4-acre gorilla forest, and they have also award-winning glacier run. These are all pretty new. So the gorilla forest actually talks about human culture in Africa. It talks about habitat. They have 11 western lowland gorillas and 2 pygmy hippos, and those are all endangered species. The old mining town theme, this is in the Glacier Run. They have grizzly and polar bears. They're both threatened species, sea lions, Steller sea eagles, snowy owls. So again, they're trying to educate, but they're also trying to breed, and they're also trying to give them a better life with a better habitat, a more natural habitat. So zoos and captive breeding programs help preserve many endangered species, such as tamarin. The last thing I'm going to talk about is Endangered Species Act. So this it's actually, it preserves one species at a time. So the goal is to recover species so they no longer need protection under the Endangered Species Act. And this is also implements under CITES, which is Convention on International Trade of Endangered Species. So they've actually, you can't bring ivory into the country. You can't bring a rhinoceros tusk into the country. And that's because of CITES. That's what controls that. But the United States also controls it, but they are part of CITES. So this is an international trade. So it prohibits the trade in an listed species, so whole organisms. You can't bring, a tiger in, but it also includes parts like skins, bones, teeth, flowers, leaves, feathers, etc. So you basically, well, eagles, I'm not sure if eagles are endangered anymore or not, but it used to be if you were caught with an eagle feather, you could have been arrested through the Endangered Species Act. So one endangered species is the Indiana bat. It has this white nose syndrome, which will eventually kill it. And so if you go into you shouldn't really go into caves because you could spread it and things like that. Mostly mammals are in Endangered Species Act and birds. It's really hard to get down here. Some plants are, like the Short's goldenrod is, but people like mammals, so mammals are really, and birds, and so these two really make up all of the Endangered Species Act. But mollusks, they need to be protected and things like that, but these are not protected as well. So mainly endangered species are generally K strategy species. They have low biotic potential. A lot of times they're the high predator. They're usually specialists. They're rare, things like that. They're commercially valuable. So to designate a species as an endangered or threatened, the Fish and Wildlife Service must list the species, and there's a real complicated way to get it listed. And then you designate critical habitat where the species is found. And then you develop a recovery plan to help species survive and thrive. And this is this minimal viable population size. So you have to say, okay, to save the monarch butterflies, we need to save, 50,000 butterflies. So this is a number that's not easy to come up with for certain species. And then you have to say how much habitat needs to be saved for habitat. So it's not easy to get a species listed, I'll say that. And Trump has actually made it harder. So it says the changes to the ESA regulations include no automatic prohibitions on the harming or killing, import or export of threatened species listed in the future. So basically, he went against CITES. So he actually got out of CITES. He's not in CITES anymore. They also cripple the ability to designate critical habitat necessary for the recovery of listed species. So this is one of the most contentious parts of the Endangered Species Act, is you have to preserve habitat for this species, and whoever owns the land doesn't not want to, like if this is out west and have your cattle on a BLM land, and now they're saying, okay, you can't put your cattle on here anymore because there's an endangered species, that makes the farmers mad. So they don't like that part. And then the administration's amendment will also decrease science-based decision-making. How do you get that off there? While increasing political and economic influence over ESA. So he has basically weakened the ESA. So, but he's not an environmental president. So there's another video. I'm not going to show that. But there are success stories. So the bald eagle has come back. The whooping crane has come back. The gray wolf, the gray whale, the grizzly bear, the sea otter. This Indian paintbrush is a plant. The red wolf, Florida's key deer. Anyways, so there are some success stories for sure. But I would say what is even better than the ESA is actually what the Nature Conservancy does. The Nature Conservancy preserves habitat. They buy big tracts of habitat, and they try to buy it where it's a biodiversity hotspot where there's endemic species or endangered species. They buy the habitat, and that not only preserves the habitat, it preserves the species. And ESA is good, but it's one species at a time, and it's really difficult, and it involves politics and the government. Where the Nature Conservancy goes out and they actually buy up habitat, and they buy up specific tracts of habitat where there's endemic species or endangered species or high biodiversity, and that sort of circumvents all of this stuff that gets in with the ESA and the government. And I'll just show you this example. So basically, Cumberland Lake is the biggest dam on Cumberland Lake is this Wolf Creek Dam right here. And that's where we get our, I don't know why that goes. That's where we get our rainbow trout when we do our trout in the classroom, is from this Wolf Creek Dam down here. If I go down here, it's right here. So, and that basically dams the Cumberland Lake. So behind the dam is Cumberland Lake. But the Wolf Creek Dam needed to be repaired. So they had to lower the level of the lake in 2017 to repair Wolf Creek Dam. So the Army Corps of Engineers, which built the dam, discovered colonies of the tiny, rare, dusky-tailed darter in the headwaters. And headwaters are up here. So this is the darter right here. So it's an endangered species. So the Department of Fish and Wildlife and Corps of Engineers refused to raise the level of the water to normal levels because of this endangered fish. And so all the people, the business owners and the lake owners, basically they were being affected. So they wanted to raise it to the original level because of tourism. And so this went on for a while. There was this fight between U.S. Department of Fish and Wildlife, Corps of Engineers. They're saying this is an endangered species. We can't raise the level of the dams, and the business owners were having a fit about it. So it got highly political, and eventually Mitch McConnell got involved, and he said he ridiculed the situation on the floor of the Senate, saying the administration was protecting a fish from water. So what's next? Protecting birds from the sky. So he really pushed that, and they actually raised the level of the dam. And I think they actually did move some fish to a different area. But that's the idea of an endangered species can be really, it's complicated to get an endangered species listed and actually protect that species. So if you could have just protected some habitat where that fish was, that would have circumvented all of this fiasco. Okay, so basically they did raise the level of the lake in 2014, and then this is what they agreed to. One is to capture and keep darters to use in later recovery efforts. So Corps of Engineers pay for fixing 2 sites on Big South Fork polluted by acid drainage from old coal mines. And Corps of Engineers will complete a soil stabilization project. So this is to improve habitat. But anyway, so that's how that went down. Okay, so this is my take-home message. If I want you to get anything, this is what I sort of want you to understand about the Endangered Species Act. So Endangered Species Act actually saves one species at a time. It's hard to determine the minimal viable population. It should protect habitat, but Trump actually took that away. And it's like the elephants. So basically what they did was the elephants were hunted because of their ivory, and their population actually decreased drastically. So then they stopped the import of environment. You could no longer have ivory. So the elephant population came back. But when the elephant population came back, all that habitat they used previously was taken over by all the humans because there's too many humans in Africa. This is basically run by the government, which gets complicated. It gets political, which is complicated. And you always run into this issue of man's rights versus the animal plant's rights. And the man's rights almost always wins. So there's lots and lots of issues with the ESA. And so Trump weakened it because he's mainly for man's rights. But there's just issues with species diversities and the Endangered Species Act. On the other hand, ecological diversity. So if you're saving, ecosystems, it saves the intact community or ecosystem. It saves the food web, which is many species. And it saves habitat, which is the number one cause of extinction. It does not get political. And basically, this is where you have your biodiversity hotspots. So not only the Nature Conservancy, but the Nature Conservancy is known for this. They do buy this land and then they actually sell it. But when they sell the land, it has conditions that come with it that you can't develop it. But the Nature Conservancy is private, so it doesn't get invested into all this political stuff. So I'm just saying, while the Endangered Species Act is okay, this is much more efficient and a much better way to actually preserve biodiversity. I think that might be it. I think that's it. So that's it. So that's all I have for biodiversity. Again, I would understand this slide right here. This slide is important to me. So that is, so that's it. So how do I get out of this?